Yo, those nails are gross. Go cut them suckers. Welcome back to Flipping Tables. I'm Fernando here with Javi. We want to welcome you guys back to episode 3 of Fanning the Flame. Today we're going to be describing and getting into distractions, things that are sometimes stopping us from growing, things that are stopping us from being able to keep that fire lit. And the number one thing we want to do is really identify them all, but more importantly, be able to address each one, right?
Yeah.
To get into how we get over those, how we get away from those,
Right.
how we put a stop to them and end to them completely.
Yeah. Or just call it out, right? Call out some of those things that distract us, right?
Yeah.
And so we want to dive deep and give you guys a better understanding of what those distractions look like in our lives, or and maybe in your life, and then what we've done to help us, right, and get out of certain things. So we want to dive in, and I think off the top of my head, we talk about distractions. We can talk about friends.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So a lot of times friends, we love them and we like to hang out with them, but they can also be a distraction.
Yeah. So
Right.
sometimes an emphasis on who the sphere of influence is in your life.
Your sphere of influence.
And one of those biggest ones is going to be friends. You can get into families and so on and so forth, but we can dive into friends and see what kind of influence they bring to your life and how they sometimes add or subtract certain things that we need as a Christian in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, a lot of your friends will definitely, like you said, sphere of influence. Your friends will definitely influence you into certain things, right? They'll shape you or they'll mold you into the person you are or will become. So a lot of times, we like, I say we, right? But they like to do a lot of fun things that this world says fun, right? And that's partying, right? That's diving into maybe drinking, doing drugs, having sex, right? Sexual relationships, so on and so forth, maybe looking at porn. And so they can also, I think, also influence you on your mental state. So, diving into, let's say, drinking and drugs, right? They can definitely influence you. I remember as easy, thank God I never, that's something that I didn't struggle with, right? But I mean, I used to walk home from school, high school.
Yeah.
And every day, one of my boys, we lived in the same neighborhood, we'd walk home and he would be smoking. It'd be cigarettes, it could be weed. And he would have he knew I was Christian. He was raised in church too, but then, he left. But knowing I was Christian, he would be like, "You want some, bro?" And, he'd be like, "You want some?" I'd be like, "No, I'm good." But it was a constant thing.
Like, let's keep going. You sure?
You sure you don't want
every other day?
All right. And so I think, they can definitely influence you into trying it, and just really quick, like I had an experience one time. I was going somewhere where I shouldn't be going, right? And with some friends that like to party and stuff, and they were getting high. And because I didn't want to get high, they hotboxed the car, right? Because I didn't want to smoke, they locked the windows and they put them up and they hotboxed the car.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So because I didn't want to do it, so were they good friends? Probably not. You know what I mean? But
it depends on what you call good friends, right?
Right.
To me and you, they're not.
Right. But I mean, they definitely, that's a distraction.
Yeah.
That's a distraction. I don't think anything good will come out of you being high. Anything good will come out of you being drunk.
Of course.
Right. You can't even function. People can't run. People can't walk. You definitely can't drive. Right. So,
I do know.
I'm gonna make a left turn.
So I'll tell you this, because I was on the opposite side, right? Mm-hmm. Where I didn't necessarily had a Christian headstrong home, or I grew up in a broken home type of thing, right? And drugs is something that I did at a very young age. Alcohol, the whole works, right? Experienced with a lot of different things, and the downside to someone like me growing up, when I hear you say those things, I'm like, well, he just doesn't know, because I drove multiple times, and I was perfectly fine.
You made it home.
Yeah, I made it home every single time. Like, but that's just the ignorance, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Like me wanting to argue that.
Mhm.
I can sit here and want to argue that with you, but at the end of the day, it's still wrong. Doesn't matter if I can
If you
drive it
made
home.
it, yeah.
That just speaks on tolerance, you know. It doesn't necessarily speak on how smart or dumb it is.
Right,
You
right,
know what I'm saying?
right.
So at the end of the day, like it's just a matter of when we're describing this, right? What does it lead you to? What are those friends leading you to?
Yeah.
Because drugs themselves, they do they do stop you from being able to they do stop you from being able to do the things that you should be doing. They stop you from being able to focus,
Right.
you know. And there's going to be a lot of people out there who will argue the whole medicinal thing and all of that. And I'm not a scientist to tell you the depths of how truth
Yeah.
that is, right? But nor am I interested in learning it, like
Mm.
or getting into it. I'm like,
Right.
oh, let me go experiment to figure
Yeah.
out what's good and what's wrong. It's like if I don't need it, then what's the point? You know, the book of Corinthians, first book of Corinthians, chapter 10, verse 23 speaks on how everything is we're allowed to do anything, right?
Right.
It talks about how we're allowed to do anything that we want to do, but it emphasizes that not everything is good for you. It also emphasizes that not everything is beneficial to you.
Beneficial, yeah.
You know what I mean? So focusing on those key words, everything. I think the important thing is always to focus that the scripture is there to
Yeah.
guide us, and sometimes we instead of allowing scripture to guide us, we let our friends guide us. So going back to the drug things is there's addicts for a reason. A lot of these drugs can become addictions. And sometimes we tend to emphasize addiction on drugs or an addiction on alcohol. But today I want to say, hey, let's talk about addiction to pornography, addiction to masturbation, addiction to just parties, trying
Yeah.
to be out there with your social friends, you know,
Yeah.
socializing, addiction to just scrolling, you know, when it comes to phones and all that stuff. Sometimes it's just watching videos, binging on Netflix, which is a huge thing now. You know,
Yeah.
there's so many things, games, video games. Now you have access to thousands of things that can distract you on your
Yeah.
phone, and we tend to just focus on saying addiction only comes as a drug, and it's not just a drug.
Yeah.
If you have an addictive personality, guess what? Addiction
Something.
is
Yeah.
something that you have to be able to get rid of.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about addiction, when the fruit of the spirit talks about self-control,
Yeah.
and if you lack that, then a lot of these things you're going to start checking off when
Yeah.
you do gain that self-control.
Right. 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 No, I like that because I think a lot of times it's about doing like a self review, self
Yeah.
analyzing, and you know sometimes we can lie to ourselves,
Yep.
right? We'll lie to ourselves. We're like, nah, nah, I'm good.
We tend to be
I'm
good at
good.
it too.
Yeah, yeah, I'm good at no, I don't have an addiction to. I can control. I have this under control, right? But we're just lying to ourselves,
Yeah.
right? And so, like you said, have understanding that and having that self control, self awareness, to be honest with yourself and say, "Yo, I actually struggle with this." Right? It's not just drugs or drinking, but um, like you said, games, whether it be like video games or sports,
Yeah.
right? Things that you become addicted to. So, um, we can dive into that as well. I wanted to, I guess, touching on like things that can be distractions. um Maybe not everybody, I guess everybody's experience is a little different, but talking about lust and pornography and stuff like that, it's not something that my parents showed me,
Yeah.
that's for sure, right? It's not something that a leader at my church showed me, that was for sure. It wasn't something that my teacher in school showed me, that's for sure,
Yeah.
right? But it was something that I remember I went to a friend's house, um, because we were gonna do a project, and um, I was pretty innocent growing up. I wasn't like super curious. My mom, we grew up in church, so we we weren't exposed to a lot of things.
Yeah.
She was very like good at um, like controlling the household, what came in, what came out, right? So I remember I went to my friend's house. He's a good friend. We went to go do a project, and then he's like, "Hey, look what I found on this guy." He had a guy that was renting his basement, right? He's like, "Look what I found on his computer." and he pulls up a site, and I'm like, bro, and that was the first time. You know what I
Shocked.
mean? I was like, bro, what? But that opens up a window, and now you're like, what was that site again, or what does that look like, or and that leads to other stuff, and now
Yeah.
you're, you know, it takes a hold of your mind, it distracts you because now you can't even have you might even get to a point where it becomes such an addiction that you can't even hold a conversation with a woman without picturing like, what would she look like if she didn't have all these clothes on?
Yeah.
I wonder what she looks like or the things I would do to that girl. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's we have to be mindful. Like, I know we were talking about fanning the flame, but these are distractions that will cause you to leave that fire unattended
Yep.
and let it die out. And now you're out somewhere else,
Yeah. Exactly.
chasing something else. So, if I want to share, like, if I could share something in Genesis, chapter 39 is when this is Joseph now at Potiphar's house. And, the Bible says that Joseph was a handsome man, and Potiphar had made him in charge of his household. And this is Potiphar's wife is pretty much hitting on Joseph. And in um, I believe it was verse 7, it says, and Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. Come and sleep with me, she demanded. But Joseph kept refusing, right? So the I guess that temptation, that distraction is there. It's always
Yeah.
chasing us. Sometimes, and it's true, like sometimes we're not looking for it.
Yep.
I didn't go to my friend's house being like, hey, bro, do you know about this? Or have you seen this? Or what does that look like? Sometimes the distraction is chasing you,
Yeah.
right? And so we have to be mindful of that. So, but, Joseph refused. Joseph, said no. But the Bible says that she kept putting pressure on him day after day. And then one day she grabbed him. She said, "Come." It says she grabbed him by his cloak, demanding, "Come on, sleep with me." And it says Joseph tore himself away and left his cloak in her hand, and he ran from the house. So a
The
lot of times,
quickness.
yeah, he dipped. He said, "I'm
Yeah.
not entertaining this. I'm not hang." Because a lot of times I think we as men, or maybe as human beings, we have that thought in our hand, like, hey, I can do this. I can stand around my friends that
Yeah.
are drinking and
We're strong.
smoking, and I'm
We're
strong
strong.
enough
Yeah.
to
Until they hotbox you.
until they hotbox you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or they give you a drink that's a little fruity and
Yeah.
you can't taste it,
Yeah.
and you're like, "What kind of juice is this?" And then now you're drunk.
Spiked.
You know. Um, so a lot of times, or we hang out with that girl, we want to Netflix and chill,
Yeah.
and her hands on your thigh. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
I could take it. I
Next,
could take
the
it.
one
Then I
wrong move,
got.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Got.
you
Got.
get got, right.
Yeah.
So, diving into like the sex and pornography and all that, but
And it's
we have to run.
yeah.
We have
And
to
and one of
run.
the things that stands out to me is what you just read is that his cloak got left in her hands.
Yeah,
Like the force that he had to run with in order for his clothes to be left behind, for
yeah,
it to tear off of him and for him to be able to leave.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think that the also, like, not just the force, but the assurance. Like
Yeah.
I do not care what I have to do.
Hmm.
I don't care what happens, but I cannot, do this. I
Yeah.
have to get out of here. Like, it's not like, he left his cloak. So that means he was left naked.
Yeah.
He was left naked and he ran away. Like, he did not care that he was gonna leave naked and that his clothes were behind. He just needed to leave.
And I always like to emphasize because it's the word always says things directly to us, right? It's telling us a story, but what it means to us on a day like today, I would see it as, hey, your friends are smoking. Hey guys, I'm gonna catch you guys in
I'm
the
gonna
next
catch
one.
you in another day.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm out. I'll see you guys later. Nah, don't leave, don't leave. Come on, just hang out. Nah, we're good. You guys have fun. I'll see you on the next one.
Hmm.
But being able to say I'm out, and then literally getting up and leaving.
Yeah, and
Because if
leaving.
you just sit there, no, guys, I don't like this. Oh, come on, little by little, you're gonna get stuck there
Right.
because you're not decisive. You have to be able to get up, make a
Yeah.
decision, and move.
That's
Just
kind of what
like
we were
this
saying
guy did.
about boundaries too,
Yeah.
right? Like, boundaries. Like, I think there will be a day when if they're really your friends, that they'll respect that and say, all right, like, today we're not gonna do it right now
Yep.
because he's here.
Yep.
Like, right now, I have a lot of friends that they're work friends, and they're like, hey, let's go to happy hour.
Yeah.
Bro, I don't drink. So I'm literally just gonna go there and stand next to you for what?
And the crazy part is like if you go on social media and you follow other agents,
Yeah.
All these ages, they're all, what are they talking about? Oh, a realtor's life is the stress and drinking. And they emphasize that drinking is a
Yeah.
normal thing,
Yeah.
go get drunk, go lose control because that is your only way out from the stressful life that you lead.
Mm.
But they put that on and they normalize it.
Yeah.
Like it's okay to become an alcoholic if
Yeah.
that's what it takes for you to function
Yeah.
properly because your job is so stressful. Like we're always looking for outs. In the downside to drugs and alcohol industry is that they tend to make it seem like it's good for you
Right.
because we all need time off,
Yeah.
you know.
There's the way to unwind.
But what the word tells us is like, yeah, there's times to rest. Rest in Him,
Rest in
wait in
Him.
Him. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? So like, there's certain things that everyone uses because we need it, which is a logical thing that our bodies need. But everyone puts their own twist to it
Right.
to try and get what they are looking for out of
Right.
it.
Yeah. I mean, even like I remember my barber. My barber. I've known him since like I was probably a freshman in high school. You
Mm.
know, and probably 10 plus years, right? Closer to 15 years, probably. And even then, like like a few months ago, he's like, how he always asks me how work is and things like that, and he goes, Javi, you still don't drink?
Yep.
He's like, man, every other realtor I know drinks. And I'm like, I'm not about that. I go to church. You know what I'm about. But he was so like he said it with such a like shock. I'm like, what kind of person does he knows me? What kind of person does he think I am?
Yeah.
But he's like, man, that's crazy. You're the only person I know that like realtor that doesn't drink
Yeah.
because everybody else does it. Like you said, even part of the job sometimes networking, right? You have a drink in your hand while you're talking. It's the look, right?
Yeah.
It's the vibe that you got to give off. I'm like, that's not what I'm about. I'd rather not go, right? Because I just don't want to get involved in that circle of
Yeah.
friends. Because who else knows what they're gonna drag me into?
Yeah. What's next after
What's
that?
next after that,
The
right?
after party. Well,
hmm
let's go to this
What
after
else
party.
they're
Let's go to
doing?
there. Yeah.
Yeah, what else they're doing? So, um, let's see.
And I'll jump into this one because at the end of the day, like you said, sometimes it's just a drink. But growing up as someone who was surrounded by a lot of this stuff, it always would start with a drink. But once you start getting too tipsy, well, let's balance you out. We'll go to the bathroom, hit a couple lines of coke,
Mm,
get you back straight up. Now you can go another couple of hours. And now you start now you're high off your mind, coke, but yet you're still drinking. So as
right.
soon as that starts to bring you down, you go again. You know what I'm saying? And you stay up all night going at it. There's I can tell you that there's from experience that there's a lifestyle of people that do that where you start partying Friday, you lose your mind on Saturday, you recover Sunday just so you can get back on your feet on Monday.
On Monday.
But it takes the whole day Sunday instead of us resting in God, trusting in Him, refilling ourselves, being regenerated with strength. We have a different lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the one thing that we're trying to identify is that all these things are not necessarily you're allowed to do some of these things, a lot of these things,
Yeah.
but they're not all beneficial.
Or like you can do it.
Yeah,
You know,
but they all
like
has
it all has
consequences. So like
consequences.
you mentioned that you just happened to go to your friend's house and he showed you images, right,
Yeah.
or a video, whatever it was. The downside to the way that our brain works is that once we see a picture, we can't remove the picture from our
Yeah.
minds. Sometimes those pictures will stay in there, and I believe that the enemy tends to always try to hijack everything that God does, right? Just like God can remind us of the words that He wants us to use to be able to spread the gospel, the enemy can also say, "Ooh, remember that picture?"
Mm-hmm.
Especially in times of temptation. Like you said, those pictures, those images lead you to start wondering about the other chick that you
Right.
just saw. Oh, but what I saw in that video, I'd be down to hook up
Right.
with her and do that same thing,
Yeah.
same action, same everything. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because that's just the way that our minds work. That's the nature that is in us,
Yeah.
and that's the things that sometimes again we forget to identify and we forget to come up with a plan on how to get rid of these things.
Yeah. And I think honestly, like again, like I was saying earlier, right? Like sometimes it's not us looking for it, right? I didn't go to
Yeah,
my friend's house looking for that,
yeah,
right? I went to go do a project, a school project, and that happened to come about. So just like but that also would lead, to me like looking back up, oh, what is this, or looking at
Yep.
certain images or finding other sites or whatever, right? And then
Curiosity.
clicking,
Yep.
and then, or then it leads to you talking to women a certain way, right? The girls that now you like and are starting to kind of, right? So um I mean, like going back to the Joseph story, like he got out of there. He said no, but that the story didn't end there, right? There's still consequences, there's still repercussions
Yep.
to it. Even though he did nothing wrong, he was still punished for it,
Yep.
right? So sometimes we might think like, I'm, like just by saying no, we're out of it. But that again, right? The devil is gonna keep coming back around, keep circling around, trying to steal something, trying to devour you, and trying to kill you ultimately,
Yeah.
right? So um, like what happened was he got lied on. She said he tried to sleep with me, he tried to
Yeah.
rape me, and he got thrown in jail after that, right? So we have to also be mindful, right? Like that our actions are going to have consequences. Our friends, the distractions that we allow, the things we allow to take part of our life, are gonna have consequences. Not not maybe immediately, but further down the line, they will for
Yeah.
sure. You know.
One of the things that we talked about is like parties. This is normally where you get all the access to all the drinks, all the drugs, and
Hmm.
everything. Most teenagers, I would even say even young adults, when they're throwing parties, the first thing that comes to mind is you're going there, you're looking for someone to hook up with,
Yeah.
you know? And and I remember growing up that it was we always had games that we'd come up with. Like, oh, who's gonna bag like the baddest chick, like
Hmm.
who's gonna hook up with the baddest one. And I remember multiple times guys would lie on girls, like, oh yeah, I got that. Oh, I got that, I got that. They didn't get nothing. They
Yeah.
just
Wanted to brag.
they just wanted to brag about it,
Yeah.
And down the road, unfortunately, the way that our society works is like, guys can talk about girls and brag about how many bodies they have, and it makes them like, oh yeah, those are dogs. They're go getters.
Mhm.
But a girl does it, and it makes her look like, oh, she's promiscuous, oh, she's out there, she got bodies, and everyone looks down on
Nobody
her.
wants.
Nobody wants them afterwards. So all of that had consequences. Sometimes that the party's going to be
Mhm.
their version of lit, right? You know that when you walk into that there's going to be alcohol, it's going to be drugs. And if you know that those alcohol and that drug, once it gets into your system, can challenge your own thoughts, your own, what's the word I'm looking for? It can challenge your own ethics, your own morals, and all that. You're putting yourself in a position
Mhm.
where you can fall, which is the opposite of what Joseph did, which he avoided the position of
Mhm.
being able to fall into temptation. Even he had consequences. And
Right.
sometimes we're so naive to think that we can walk into those situations. Oh, no, I didn't do anything, so nothing's going to happen to me.
Mhm.
The truth of the matter is that light and darkness have nothing to do with each other. They can't be in the same place.
Yeah.
So if you happen to walk into that type of ambience and you're like, oh, this is cool, I can be here, I can dwell in this and not be affected by it, you have to ask yourself, are you truly light?
Yeah.
Because if you can do it and everything, the darkness is not scattering away from you, something is definitely wrong.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where you have to
Something's
really
up.
start looking, like you said, doing a self-examination, looking inward and saying, okay, let me identify these things.
What is, yeah, the things that we have to work on, right?
Yep.
I think honestly, like a lot of times for me personally, I would just say again, like with parties and stuff,
Hmm.
I'd be like, all the people are doing is just to go drink,
Yeah.
and that's again, that's not my scene. So it was like, for me, it was a waste of time. Like, why would I even, you know, um, put up with that? Like, why would I even go show up and just stand on the wall,
Yep.
right? People drink it. Like, I'm okay. I'm okay off of that, right? So I'm not even gonna let that be a distraction,
You know.
right? But among other distractions, I think we could talk about cell phones. Cell
Yep.
phones. We can talk about social media. We could talk about like texting. We could talk about things on your camera roll,
Yep.
right? Even sometimes like we can talk about video games,
Yeah.
right? And we talk about addictions, again, distractions. But like, how many hours do we spend on our phones, right? Luckily, like my iPhone has like all the iPhones I think have the like it tells you the times that you spend on average every day. And for work, of course, I'm on my phone a lot too. So That's part of it. But I'm on my phone like over 10 hours a day. That's a lot, and not all those 10 hours are meant for work. Some of them are meant like are listening to music. Some of them are phone calls, texts, emails, but some of them are I have video games on my phone.
Yeah.
And that's a distraction when I could have been praying or reading the
Yep.
Bible or putting together a lesson or something, spending time with God. I'm distracted by playing, a game on my phone for 2-3 hours, right? Not even like 30 minutes. I'm talking about 2-3 hours a day,
Yeah.
right? That's a big distraction,
Yeah.
right? And we find not just on games, but social media. Like, I'm very careful. I put a time limit on my social media because I noticed that I was on there the same 2-3 hours. And I was like, man, I cannot be, social media is good, but it's also like a fake life,
Yeah.
right? Nobody's promoting what they're really going
Going
through,
through. Yeah.
right? Everybody's happy.
Putting highlights.
Everybody,
Everybody just puts their
everybody,
highlights.
yeah, you have highlights, but, I think for me, I had to put a time limit because I said, man, like I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and nothing good is coming out of it. I started realizing like, man, this person's life, right? Their highlights are way better than mine. And now
Yeah.
I'm comparing myself.
Yep.
And now I feel like a failure because, you know, I'm at this age and I don't have this
Yeah.
and they do.
And it reminds me of the verse that we talked about in the last episode, um, in Colossians chapter 3,
Mm-hmm.
verse 5, where it says, "Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you," right? And it talked about sexual morality, purity. It talked about passion, evil desires. One of the ones that it really talks about is covetousness. Other versions say idolatry, right?
Idolatry, yeah.
But the biggest thing that I took away from covenants when I looked it up is it means having or showing a great desire to possess something belonging to someone else,
Yeah, you
right?
covet.
You're coveting what they have, and then like other descriptions or synonyms to it was greed, desire, possessiveness, selfishness, jealous, to be envious, or to be insatiable. And when we talk about all these things, a lot of the stuff that people are highlighting are going to be how they're going out to smoke, how they're out drinking, how they're out shopping, how they have the newest clothes, newest shoes, the baddest cars. It's all money. It's all a lifestyle in a pursuit of what they feel it's happiness, but in the sense that it's not necessarily real. It's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily that you are happy. It just means that you just happen to be loaded, which is good for you. But like
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to take you to a righteous path.
Or that you're happy,
Exactly.
right? People pretend to be happy, have the best relationship,
Yep.
and inside their, or that relationship is falling apart.
Yeah. But to me, like the thing that throws me off is like you see all that, and like you said, you start comparing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't have that. Oh man, I'm working hard, but I still can't achieve that car. I still can't achieve that type of account. I can't travel as much. I can't shop like that. You start comparing and you start looking at what you do and you don't have, and it gets to the point where you forget to be thankful. To be grateful for what you do have, and for what
Yeah.
you do have, and you start to belittle the things that have been given to you,
Yeah.
that are being provided to you, and therefore it starts a snowball effect, where instead of getting rid of all this sexual immorality, because let's face it, sometimes on the feeds there's sexual content or desirable content.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're going to see a lot of impurities, you're going to see a lot of passionate stuff. Sometimes it's not that it's sexual or nudity or something like that, but sometimes it can just be sensual content. You know what I mean? So it gets
Yeah.
to the point where it starts to awaken your different like fleshy passions that
Right.
you have, and that leads from one thing to the other. Because if you devote enough time into that, it gets to the point where it starts leading you. It's a gateway to
We
go
call it a
into
rabbit hole, right?
yeah,
Like you go down the
exactly.
rabbit hole, like you open up your IG, you open up Twitter, you see something a little promiscuous, you see
Yeah,
something a little like you see a girl showing all her goodies, you're like, I can go see the real thing. Hold on, let me
yeah,
switch to my web browser real quick and type in a few things. Now you're looking at videos, right? Now that social media led you to something else.
yeah,
If you're not careful, it leads you down the rabbit hole. Or the other way, shopping,
yeah.
right? Like people, they see something, or you're like, everybody's talked about it where you're talking about a certain thing that you want to buy, and all of a sudden your feeds, that's
It
all you
pops up. It
buy.
pops
Yeah,
out. Yeah, they
like
be
that's on.
listening. They be
They
listening.
listen, right? So then you're like, oh snap, let me go on, this website to buy it. Let me go on, you know, on Amazon. Let me go on Target or what, to look for it to buy it. And now you're spending your money just because you simply were scrolling through social media, right? Um, I think the other thing was um, like as far as like a distraction, we say a distraction because it's not adding anything to your life.
Yeah.
You scrolling for hours is not adding anything to your life.
Subtraction.
Yeah, so it's not, there is a form. I'm not saying social media is 100% bad,
Right.
right? Because I can use my platform to like this to have, to talk about the
Facts.
gospel, to spread the gospel. I can use it to advertise my business, right, in a positive way. But if all I'm doing is scrolling, seeing, who else is doing what else, where everybody else is at, that's not adding anything. That's
Yeah.
not being useful with my time,
About finding
right?
a balance, perhaps,
Yeah,
like knowing, again, it always gonna, we have the choice of what we follow. We have a choice on what we click on, what we
right.
like, what we
Yeah,
don't like, what we reject and what we don't reject. The question is, if you don't have the self control, what are you doing to stop yourself from accidentally stumbling into the rabbit hole? You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Because if you're just letting it linger, if you're just letting it sit there, if you're not blowing that ash away little by little, it's not like it happens from one to the other. You're not throwing an ice bucket on your fire, but
yeah,
what you are doing is you're letting that linger, you're letting it sit there, you're not doing anything to fan it. Most of the time, just fanning it away blows the ashes away.
yeah,
It just blows some of it away. As it builds up, it falls, it goes away. It and the heat itself, well, sometimes you'll see it just go away. It's when you don't do anything. It's when you know it's there and
hmm
are not doing anything that it becomes a problem for
yeah. And like I think that's part of it. Like we don't just want to talk about like the distractions and call it out, but we also want to help. Where were some of the things that we did or you did
you.
to step away from certain things, right? You talked about drinking and driving. Like, what were some of the steps that you took to step away
For me, I would say that
or to stop, right?
for me, it's going to be a little bit different, and I try not to always hold people to standards like me. For example, I started living on my own when I was 16, 17 years old. You know what I mean? So I had a different upbringing than most
Hmm.
kids nowadays. Who are at 20, 25, they're still staying with their parents and all that stuff.
Mm,
They don't have that sense of responsibility. My mom started us off early. If you were working, you were putting
providing.
some, yeah, you were putting something on the table, something. It didn't have to be everything, but you had to help to
Hmm.
provide. So it's either you're in school 100% or you're helping 100%, but you're not going to be in between or just bumming it out, just sitting on the couch all day long. That's not going to happen in my mom's house. So I would say when I decided to do it, it was a game changer. I found out that Abby was coming. My For those who don't know, my daughter, my wife was pregnant, and as soon as I knew she was coming, I was like, it all just kind of came to me.
You click.
One of the biggest thing for me was the lack of a father figure, lack of a father in my household. You know, so the one thing that I don't know if it was good or bad, but at that point I was like, oh, I never want to be like my dad.
Hmm.
Never want to be like that guy. And what's the number one thing? Just being present, not being absent. Even if I'm there physically, but not there emotionally, spiritually, or any type of
Hmm.
thing. That back then I probably wasn't thinking about the spiritual aspect, right? But just to be there for my wife and my daughter, that to me was the biggest thing. So for me, I was able to say no more, but I was unknowing scripture and all like that. If I saw guys even getting ready to spark up, turn the other way. Why are you always like that? You're so young. You should live your life. I was like, I already lived my life. I did
Hmm.
plenty of that.
Yeah.
I did it. I didn't wait till I was 25, 26 to start doing it. Like I did it since I was like 12, 13 years old. I started
Yeah.
smoking. So to me, it's like nothing new and nothing desirable. I knew I could have fun,
Yeah.
but I also knew that I had a wife and a kid at home that were more important to me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to do anything to jeopardize that.
Yeah.
Because I valued that. So sometimes we do need a reason why we want to do things.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I say this a lot. The younger generations might not like me for saying it, but sometimes the new generations, they tend to fall in love with the results, but they don't love the process. They don't
Process.
love the work. I'm saying, oh, I want to have that car. When you say go get a job,
Hmm.
oh man, why do I have to work so hard? Why can't I just trade stocks? why can I do this? Why can I do that? I was like, because those people's lifestyles are not that easy.
Yeah.
Trading stocks is not like you have a glamorous life. It's a stressful job. And guess what? Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Hmm.
And when you're down bad, it's tough.
Yeah.
But again, they don't want to hear that part. They just want to hear the part where the money
You're
goes
getting
up
money.
and you're
Yeah.
getting bread. You know, it's like, oh, now I can afford the lifestyle that I see on social media.
Hmm.
It's not that easy. If
Yeah.
that was that easy, everybody would do it. You know what I mean? Everybody would be on it. It's not easy.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of really understanding and knowing and being able to have a plan, because it all boils back down to the same thing. What are you really doing to plan things out and to work on things?
Yeah. I think you're talking about falling in love with the results and not the process, right? Like Joseph, he had those dreams,
Yep.
right? The
Yep.
dreams were the result. God
Yep.
showed him the vision, right? God gave him the
Facts.
result, but he didn't tell him the process.
Hmm.
He didn't tell him he was going to be betrayed. He
Yep.
didn't tell him he was going to be sold. He didn't tell him he was going to get lied on and thrown in jail for something he
Facts.
didn't try to do. Um, and then just to go through all that those ups and downs, then to be second in command, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately help save his family,
Exactly.
right? So he showed him the vision, but he had no idea his process.
We had a preacher in church not that long ago where he said had God showed him the process, he would have said, you know what, I'll pass
I'm
on
good.
this. I'm
Yeah, I'm
good. I'm
good.
good
I
right
don't
here.
want that.
I'm good right here with the cloak that they
Right.
made me. Like being my father's favorite. I'm okay. I'm right here. I don't need
Right.
to go anywhere, and I don't need nobody bound to me. My brothers don't like me. They don't take me out to play with them. I can't hang out with them. That's okay. I prefer my tent.
Yeah.
Studying and getting smart. He would have fallen in love with his position instead of
Yeah.
looking forward to his dream. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So sometimes it's just about knowing it. And I'll tell you this much too, right? It always is about a balance, because something that God spoke to me recently is that for someone like me who maybe had a different, let's say a little bit of a rougher upbringing than most kids, sometimes we tend to fall in love with the hard work to the point where we take our eyes off the prize, because all you're doing is just you're working. And I guess this can kind of take us into one of our other subjects, right? When you get distracted with work so much,
Mhm.
all you want to do is work, 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 work. Some people call it workaholics, some people call it overachievers. It doesn't really matter where you fall in. If it takes priority over your relationship with God,
Yeah.
it's a distraction.
It's a
You know what I mean?
distraction, yeah. Or an
Because
idol.
it's or an idol,
Yeah.
where the point where money is the motive.
Your idol.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? When money becomes the motive and that's all you're working towards, then you start to get distracted and you start to prioritize things differently. Where God is not your relationship. You're not waking up to say thank you.
Hmm.
You're waking up to say, I got to make this happen. I found myself again, being someone who dropped out of high school and not having an education or background, that type of stuff, no degrees, no nothing, having to work as hard as I have, I can be one to say, oh, look, you know, I can make six figures, I can do this, I can do that. And I dropped out. You don't need an education. I can say all those things,
Yeah.
but if I was to try and teach that to my kids, I'm sorry, man. My kids don't have the character that I
Right.
have.
Right.
Why? Because they haven't been through the
They don't
process
have
that
the
I have.
upbringing.
They
Yeah.
don't have that upbringing, and I don't wish the upbringing on my kids. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like I don't want that for them. So it's a matter of knowing and having a balance, creating a balance, but more than anything, always having God first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that also falls into, for example, like you talked about work and becoming a workaholic and having money as an idol, right? I think that's something that I also wasn't born rich, right? And I'm not rich yet, right? But it's like if money's gonna take priority, you're always gonna be worried about money.
Yep.
And then, I don't think of myself as a greedy person, but money's still in my heart, right?
Yep.
So it's like I can't go to church today because I also have to go work. Or how much money am I gonna make this month? Oh snap! Last month I made this much, and I'm making a little bit less this
Yeah.
month. I'm still upset. You're not happy no
Yeah.
more. You know what I mean? So we have to be careful of that, of the idols that we tend to.
It goes back to
Um,
what you were saying, like when I mentioned covetousness, right?
yeah,
About not being insatiable.
yeah,
Why? Because it gets to the point where like, hey, I want to make 50K this year.
hmm,
You make the 50K, but because you spend 10% of your life scrolling through the phone and seeing how everyone else makes six figures, now you're like, hey, 50K is not good enough. I have to go out there and make six figures. All of a sudden, you're making the six figures. Hold on, look at his house, look at his car. I can't afford that unless I make 150 or 200. Now I have to go get and do it more. It's like
Yeah.
now you're not working 40 hours. Now you're working 60, 75 hours. Just not even, you're not even working at that point to be able to live. You're only living to work.
Yeah.
In your life has completely made a 180-degree turn to the away from God.
Yeah.
Literally is what it turns out to be.
Yeah. No, and at the end of the day, it's like again, we prioritize that, right? Um, Instead of prioritizing our relationship with God.
Yep.
Now, granted, like you're not just gonna sit back and pray all day long and then God's just gonna put money in
Yeah,
your
right
account.
on your lap. Yeah.
Yeah, like you still have to put some work, but I think it's trusting God, right? And
Facts.
in Proverbs 3:9 and 10, it says, honor the Lord with your wealth, right? And with the best part of everything you produce.
Yep.
That's the best part. Don't give him the scraps. Give him the best part of your produce, right? The things that you produce. Then he will fill your barns with grain and your vats will overflow with good wine.
Yeah.
So he will appreciate that. That's the sacrifice. That's our offering. That's our tithe.
Yep.
Don't wait to pay all your bills and then pay your tithe. God's gonna provide. God's gonna provide. And I think that's something that I've been learning. Like, in the type of job that I have, I'm commission based.
Yeah.
I don't have a salary. I don't have an hourly wage. So I can work. I tell people all the time, I work out of faith,
Yeah.
pretty much,
Facts.
right? I work out of faith. Like
Because there's no guarantees.
there's no guarantee. Even if I have a deal, it's no guarantee until it closes.
Yep.
So I tell people I work out of faith. And I remember like I jumped into it at 24 years old. I had just bought a house. I think the first month I had to make a payment. I was like, what did I just do? Like it didn't hit me. It didn't hit me
Yeah.
until after, and I'm like, what did I just do, bro?
Yeah.
And I'm like, again, it sometimes we need that motivation and that drive
Yeah.
to focus, but not to be a distraction,
Facts.
right? Um, and it like I was like, man, what did I just do? Now I'm responsible for paying this,
Yeah.
and now I just went self-employed pretty much.
Yeah.
Now I have to go and get it, right? But I think we have to be very cautious of falling in love and becoming workaholics or idols or idolizing money,
Yeah.
right? And understanding like God is going to provide, money's going to come and go, you know, but prioritizing your relationship with God because that's what's going to sustain you, you
Yep.
know. And I think for me, I think that's one of the keys, falling in love with His Word, right? Um, you said like having your family, being there for your wife, sort of like woke you up. I think for me, it was like His Word,
Yeah.
replacing that because I think about it like this: like you have a certain distraction, a certain sin that you cannot, or an addiction that you cannot give up because it has such a hold on you. It's taking so much of your time, so much of your thoughts. But like if we can start replacing it with the word, right? Like the word says, his thoughts are not my thoughts,
Yep.
right? And so his plans are not your plans, right? So it's like if we can start replacing that, that's how we start. Sometimes um, I remember I would think like this, like, oh, when I turned 18, it'll just disappear. I'm good.
Yeah.
When I turn 21, it's gonna go away. When I turn 25, it's gonna. Oh, when I get married, it's gonna go away.
Yeah. It doesn't.
That's not the reality,
Yeah.
right? Like the reality is we have to fill ourselves with it. Like we can no longer just keep letting the ashes build up and keep those distractions around us, whether it be our phones be distracting, whether it be our work, whether it be games or sports that we our careers, right, or our friends. We cannot let that just keep distracting us and taking time away. Like the way if you guys have a question about like how can I overcome this addiction to drugs, alcohol, pornography, masturbation, it's literally by being in His Word, spending time with God, like replacing those things with the things of God.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's sometimes like you said, if you do have questions, you can always leave comments and ask your questions so that we can address them in the coming episodes. But one of the biggest things and I want to dive a little bit more into pornography and how that's affecting society, and not just society itself, but how it's affecting churches. It's one of the biggest industries if not the biggest industry. I heard this comment. I'd have to verify the facts on it, but I heard a comment that it's bigger than it makes more money than the NFL, the NBA, and the MLB all combined.
Combined.
You know what I mean? So it's definitely an industry that is thriving, and unfortunately, it's even affecting Christian households. You know, so it's something that we definitely want to jump into in the um, coming episodes here. But before we let you guys go, something for you to start to consider, and something for you, just food for thought, I would say, is uh, the biggest thing is always going to be like, now what? Like, what's the plan now? And I would tell you that the biggest thing that's going to change you is not just making a decision to change things, it's going to be making the conscious effort to change your lifestyle, because that's really where it's at. It's going to take sacrifice, it's going to take hard work, and it's going to really take you. Um, it's gonna hurt. You know,
You know,
it's gonna hurt.
it's a process.
It is a process, and every time when you're working out, you have soreness, right? When you want to lose weight, the diets, sacrificing the things you love, the things that you like. So it's just a matter of going through it, you know. But more than anything, accepting the process and embracing the process
Yeah.
is what I would say.
Yeah.
Any
I
last thoughts before we
Yeah, I
wrap this
mean,
one out?
it's like it's alarming, if you guys really look into it. I don't know if you want to share about like what you were sharing with me earlier about the conference that you went to and the
Yep.
stats that the I think he's a preacher,
Yep.
that he shared with you guys in terms of like the amount of people that are suffering with pornography, the amount
Yeah.
of people that are suffering with that sexual immorality in church, not
Yeah.
just you think the world's messed up, but in church, and that's again not to we're not judging anybody because we're not God, but that's exactly why we go to church. We're hurt people, we're broken people that need to be restored, right?
Yeah, I don't have his exact facts, but when we started going over what he mentioned, started looking it up. So this is some of the stuff that we came up with. Over 40 million Americans are regularly visiting porn sites, and that's just that's just the start of it, right?
Yeah.
It also says the average American visits last under 7 minutes.
Yeah. Like 6.5 minutes
Yeah,
they visit the site.
that's how long the search or the videos last. You know,
Mhm.
so it's not like they're looking for it and staying on it forever. It's literally just to get a quick fix.
Yeah.
You know, the other one is there are around 42 million porn websites, which totals around 307 million pages for porn. The porn industry. I'm gonna start over. Can you stop making changes to it because it throws
He's
everything?
like,
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
it keeps going back to the top.
Okay,
Yeah.
go back again. Just share.
Just start the
with,
porn industry.
I want to give some porn stats,
Yeah.
some stats, not porn stats.
I'm gonna just.
Some stats.
It's like a player stats.
Let me pull out my roster here.
6 receptions, 107 yards, 6 touchdowns.
Can you also like mention number 10, which is women as well?
Yeah, I'm going on 3. I'm not trying to read every word for word, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to go through them
Just
pretty
be
fast.
careful what you're reading.
Yeah.
And the name of the pastor's on the bottom.
John
Okay.
Vivier. Oh, I've seen him. Yeah. I've seen him. Okay.
I have a couple
He's
books
good.
that we
Yeah,
bought.
he's good. I've seen
His
him.
podcasts are amazing.
Him and his wife. I've seen his
Yeah.
videos.
They're lit.
Actually, should we just end this one because you said this one's at 45 minutes already? I think that we should save this one for the next one.
Yeah, you should.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna say the porn
So
industry
let's
is
just-
large. I'm gonna just say the porn industry is large, and there's a lot more facts we want to share with you guys on the next one.
We're
Yeah.
gonna share next.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump into it right now. The porn industry, the revenue. This is the stat that I was talking to earlier about, where the annual revenue It's more than the NFL, NBA, and the MLB combined. It also makes more than combined revenues for ABC, CBS, and NBC. I mean, it's a huge industry,
It's a huge
right?
industry.
And I have a lot more that we're definitely going to be diving into. Pastor John Bevere is one of the preachers who put a light on these stats, and we definitely want to get into it. So on the next episode, I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about these details, so that you guys can see that it's affecting everyone. It's not just you. It's and sometimes the enemy, what he does is that he tries to bring that shame,
Yeah, to
that
keep
shame
us.
to hold us down
Yeah,
and keep us in the dark. But we're going to bring a little bit more light into that and attack it on the next
amen.
episode.
Yeah, and if we could just leave you guys with this verse in Romans 8:1, and it says, "So now there is no condemnation for those who belong to Christ Jesus." So, with that being said, if you're feeling shamed, just know that this verse is for you. There's no more condemnation if you belong to Jesus Christ. So the enemy cannot keep you in shame anymore and condemn you for what God has forgiven you of. So tune in next week for another episode. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe. See you on the next one.
Thumbs up.